What would you do if you had a couple of $100,000 to spend on a European performance car? And let's face it, who doesn't have that sort of money just lying around? I mean, it's not like there's a cost of living crisis or anything. Anyway, let's say we did have that money. Would you go for something brawny and loud with a V8 like an Audi RS6 Avant? Would you go for something a little quieter but no less potent? If you pick the latter, well, you are in luck, because I'm about to get behind the wheel of the 2025 Audi e-tron GT. But before I hit the tarmac, what exactly is new about this cool electric sedan? One key change that Audi has made for the update is to change up the names for the model grades. So the entry variant used to be just called the e-tron GT, but now it's the S e-tron GT, and you've still got the RS, of course, but there's a new flagship, which is the performance grade. Now, Audi uses performance for a number of its other RS models, like the RS6 and things like that, but this is the first time Audi's used it for an EV. There are design tweaks inside and out, and I'll get to that soon, but bigger changes lie under the skin. Audi's upped power across the board, and the new performance grade is the most powerful Audi ever made. It's now faster to charge thanks to some serious tech tweaks, and it gets new air suspension and beefed up regenerative braking. Audi Australia is believed to be considering all three grades for launch. Standard gear is yet to be confirmed, but expect more detail when it hits Australia in the first half of 2025. But expect items like wireless phone charging, sports seats, electrically adjustable driver's seat with a memory function, a head-up display and more. Pricing's also yet to be locked in, but given it's gone up in Europe, it will probably do the same in Australia. Head to carsguide.com.au for more detail in the written review. If it feels like the Audi e-tron GT just went on sale in Australia, well, you're not wrong. It actually only arrived at the start of 2023, so this is a bit of an early update for the car. Now, it's based on the J1 platform from Volkswagen Group, and the other vehicle that shares this platform is the Porsche Taycan, and that's kind of evident when you have a look at the stance of this thing. Now, arguably, you could say that it didn't really need much of a visual tweak with this update because it was already pretty striking design, but Audi's made a few changes regardless. So the 2025 e-tron GT helps usher in a new design language for Audi, and we've seen it on some of their other new electric models. So that incorporates the new grille that you see here, the single frame grille. It's a new version of that. You've got tweaked headlights that look really, really smashing in the metal. And of course, the lower air intake is redesigned, and it looks different depending on the model grade that you choose. And of course, the higher up you go, the more aggressive it looks, and that's the same at the rear. There's also a whole bunch of new alloy wheel designs. They look really quite stunning. This is, I believe, the three-tone one. It looks like it is, but you can get a black one if you pick the performance model, and there's a whole bunch of others for the S as well. So subtle, but nicely done. So there have been a few changes inside the 2025 e-tron GT, including redesigned sports seats. And after spending quite a few hours driving through the German countryside in this car, I can say that these are very supportive and quite comfortable. They really hug you, but not to the point where you feel like you're going to be choked by the seats, which can happen in some cars, but really lovely seats. There's new inlays, and there's also a few that you can get that are a part of Audi's new exclusive line, which some of those elements might come to Australia. Stay tuned for that. This particular car has some exclusive content, including the red highlights you see and some of the stitching. You've got some very cool carbon look stuff here on the dash and also on the doors. And you've also got synthetic suede throughout. So it's a really nice design. I've spent a bit of time in the Porsche Taycan, which obviously shares this platform. And I don't love that cabin, but I do quite like the vibe of this one. Another new element is this lovely flat-bottomed and top steering wheel. And I've got to say, take note, BMW. Just because you have a performance car, it doesn't mean you have to have a really, really thick steering wheel. This one fits nicely in your hand. It's that same synthetic suede. It's really lovely. And yeah, there's a few tech changes as well. So the displays are new, and that's about it. But again, arguably, you probably didn't need to make that many changes anyway. So in practice, Audi's digital instrument cluster is one of the best in the biz. They were one of the first to have the virtual cockpit, and they've just improved on that with every new generation model. The central display, it's not massive, but it's really clear, and I've got to say it's one of the smartest sat-navs I've used in a long time. It didn't stuff up once, and a lot of the built-in sat-navs are quite unreliable, which is why often I'll just tend to go for Apple CarPlay and Google Maps, but this worked flawlessly all afternoon. Yeah, practicality wise, bottles only fit in the door when you lie them down, and probably not massive ones, but you've got a couple of cup holders here. You've got a little central storage bin here as well. You've got a great driving position. You feel so connected to the road sitting in this car because you're so low to the ground, and I just absolutely love that. Air vents, we've still got buttons. Thank you, Audi, for maintaining buttons as opposed to having everything in the touch screen. So it's a nice mix of things and ways to access the functions of the car. So I'm in the rear sitting behind my 6-foot something driving position. I've got quite a bit of leg room, which isn't really a surprise because it is technically a large sedan, but you do feel a bit hemmed in from the sides and from the roof. I'm basically scraping the headliner with my head, but it is what it is with the lovely silhouette of the car, so you would just have to put up with that. The seats back here are really comfortable. They're bucketed. The middle seat feels like an afterthought, so you probably wouldn't use that too much, and you do have a transmission tunnel here for reasons. You've got the ISOFIX, of course, on the outboards. Pull this little number down, you've got a couple of quite shallow cup holders. And of course the armrest, and you're going to struggle to fit anything like this in the door down here. So a bit of a mixed bag in the back here. So the boot of the e-tron GT is actually quite sizable. Again, it's a large car. That's not hugely surprising. The rear seats fold down 60/40 and they fold pretty flat as well. So you've got quite a long loading space. You'll find the figures of exactly how much cargo space on your screen right now. But I love this. Audi do this really well. These cargo nets really hold things in. I had a reasonably sized suitcase in here before and it just held it because we were doing some cornering and you need to hold things in place, and it did it beautifully. A couple of nooks, of course, small little nets. It's actually a really practical space. You've got quite a deep front trunk here as well, which is perfect for housing the electric vehicle charging cable. The fully electric e-tron GT has 2 motors, one on each axle, ensuring quattro all-wheel drive traction. For the S e-tron GT, the total system output is 435 kilowatts of power and 740 newton meters of torque. That's more power than the previous RS e-tron GT and enough to get it from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.6 seconds. The new RS pumps out 500 kilowatts and can hit triple digits in 3.1 seconds. And the new RS Performance has outputs of 550 kilowatts and 1027 newton meters for a dash time of 2.9 seconds. Note that each grade has more power and faster acceleration in launch control mode. A newly developed air suspension is standard, and tech wizardry like active suspension and an all-wheel steering are optional. Audi's reduced the weight of the battery pack while increasing energy density at the same time. The brand has also improved the charging rate, which now peaks at 320 kilowatts, up from 270. The 105 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery on all models can be charged from 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes on a fast charger, according to Audi. AC charging is 11 kilowatts. Driving range is impressive and runs from 609 kilometers on the WLTP for the S e-tron GT. It's 599 for the RS and 592 kilometers for the RS Performance. Consumption figures range from 18 to 21.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, depending on the grade. All right, let's see how quick this thing is. Ooh. Sheesh. Okay, it's plenty quick. It's plenty quick. As it want to be. It's an electric sports car after all. Again, I'm driving the RS, which was the flagship until the 2025 update, and now the RS Performance is the flagship. variant of the model range. And that gets a bit more poke, but honestly, I don't know if you need it. So I haven't driven the Taycan in a while, but I have driven a number of grades of that car, and I think both brands have done a really good job of having their own individual flavour of the same underpinnings. It might depend on what you prefer in terms of design. If you like a more simple look, then you know the Taycan is the winner there, but if you're after something a little bit more leery, well, you can't go past this Audi. So a few new features for the 2025 e-tron GT, one of which is active suspension. So I think the A8 might have this, or the S8, but basically it has a bunch of sensors and that kind of thing, and looks at the road ahead and then adjusts the suspension accordingly to ensure a much more comfortable ride. And I've got to say, for a car with big wheels that's a heavy EV, and I know I'm driving in Germany, so the roads are pretty good here, but some of them have been a bit crummy. The ride has been surprisingly good in this RS grade. Surprisingly good, really comfortable. You'll feel bumps when you get to like a road joint or something like that, or a bigger corrugation, but other than that, it's actually pretty comfortable. The nice little synthetic noises that Audi's made for this car have actually done a really good job in increasing the engagement of the drive experience. So some of these EV sounds are just a little bit wanky for my taste, but there's something about this that feels like a really low V8 growl, like really low, and it's just enough to kind of help you along, and I think it's just really nicely done. Other than that, it's a really quiet cabin. This is a very expensive car, and they've done a lot to obviously keep the outside noise outside, and I think they've done a really good job on that front. This is called the e-tron GT, which is Gran Turismo, Gran Tourer, whatever you want to call it, whatever language you want to use. But it does feel like a GT car. Again, this is an RS. I'm in comfort mode. Like, I feel like I could do a really long road trip in this car and not get exhausted. It's a cruiser. It really is a cruiser. But when you want it to be a bruiser, it can be. Tell you what, the steering on this thing is unbelievably sensitive. It's really sharp to the point where you have to kind of be careful and watch it, because if you give your wrist a flick a little bit too quickly or too enthusiastically, you could find yourself in trouble. Okay, we're on an autobahn now, which is pretty exciting for someone like me from Australia who never gets to drive like this legally. Let's give it a go. There is just something so impressive about European cars like this. And I'm driving at a very high speed legally on the autobahn, and it feels so composed, and it feels so controlled and so solid. Like there is, I don't feel like I'm doing the speed that I'm doing. It feels like I'm kind of going 80 kilometers an hour, but I'm breezing past people, and it just feels so tight. It's honestly a phenomenal car to drive at speed. Oh, it picks up speed so well when you're already going pretty quick, and you just put your foot down and it's just all there. It's phenomenal. I've used that word a lot for this car, but I think it's valid. When I first drove the Porsche Taycan, I said it was one of the most impressive cars I've ever driven, and I think this cousin of the Taycan, the Audi e-tron GT, is just as impressive, if not more so. The way this thing handles is wild. I've gone around bends that you wouldn't even try in like a really light hot hatch, and it has just smoothly and beautifully handled everything I've thrown at it, and it's just something to behold. It feels so light as well when you chuck it into a corner. It doesn't make sense that this is a more than 2-ton heavy EV. It just doesn't make sense. Wizardry is involved. What an absolute treat to drive this car on an autobahn. It feels like this road was made for this car, or vice versa.
The e-tron GT is a little too niche to warrant crash testing by ANCAP or Euro NCAP, so it doesn't currently have a score. but it comes with safety gear like lane change warning with exit warning and rear cross traffic alert, adaptive cruise with a speed limiter, surround view cameras, AEB, swerve assist, and a lot more. Check my written review for more details. The e-tron GT comes with Audi's 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is fairly standard for the premium segment. Impressively, the outgoing model comes with 6 years of complimentary servicing by Audi, and the schedules start at every 2 years or 30,000 kilometres. This should carry over for the new model, but will be confirmed soon.
There you have it. That's my review of the 2025 Audi e-tron GT. It remains a phenomenal car to drive, and the changes that Audi's made are meaningful, even though they might look a little bit subtle. For more on the Audi e-tron GT, head to carsguide.com.au.